What if I told you an NFL team is about to make a decision no modern franchise has ever made? Not because of injuries, not because of cap space, but because of one quarterback. 5 starters, gone. That's the situation quietly building around the Cleveland Browns. An entire offensive line potentially wiped clean in a single offseason. Not 1 or 2 pieces replaced. Not a small tweak, all 5. In a league built on continuity in the trenches, that kind of reset isn't just rare. It's almost unthinkable. And at the center of it all is Shedeur Sanders. Now here, where it gets interesting, offensive lines don't just disappear overnight. They're the backbone of a franchise. Coaches fight to protect them. Front offices invest heavily in them. Chemistry takes years to build. So when an organization even considers replacing all 5 starters, it sends a message louder than any press conference ever could. Something went wrong. Fans started noticing it first. Protection breaking down at the worst possible moments. Clean pockets collapsing instantly. Free rushers appearing untouched. And yet, despite the chaos, Sanders kept delivering lasers downfield, stepping up under pressure, and keeping plays alive. That contrast sparked the debate. Was the line simply struggling, or was there something deeper happening inside the building? Online chatter exploded. Rumors began circulating. Some fans believe the struggles weren't just bad football. They suggest there was tension between coaching philosophies and quarterback development. Others argue it was scheme failure. A few even claim there were internal politics at play. Nothing officially confirmed, but the smoke was impossible to ignore. Because here's the truth about the NFL, teams don't overhaul an entire offensive line unless they believe their quarterback is the future. Period. It's too expensive, too risky, too disruptive. So if Cleveland really moves forward with a full reset, it won't just be about performance. It'll be about protection, commitment, a declaration. And that's what makes this moment historic. If you love real talk and fearless NFL breakdowns, hit subscribe and join Coach Speaks. If the Browns pull the trigger, they won't just be replacing players. They'll be choosing a direction, choosing who this franchise belongs to, choosing whether Sanders is just another quarterback or the centerpiece of a new era. But here's the twist. Replacing 5 linemen doesn't fix culture overnight. It doesn't silence critics. And it definitely doesn't erase the whispers about what really happened behind the scenes. Because if this decision is as bold as it looks on the surface, what forced their hand in the first place? And that's where the real story begins. The whispers didn't start inside the building. They started online. At first, it was just frustrated fans breaking down game clips frame by frame. A missed block here, a free rusher there, a protection slide that made no sense. But then the edits got sharper. Slower replays, freeze frames, side-by-side comparisons, and suddenly a narrative exploded across social media. Was Shedeur Sanders being set up to fail? Let's be clear, there is no official proof of intentional sabotage, no confirmed reports, no statements from the team, but that hasn't stopped the internet from connecting dots. Rumors suggest certain protection calls consistently broke down in ways that left Sanders exposed. Fans began pointing to patterns, specific linemen missing assignments repeatedly, communication errors that looked strange. And once that seed was planted, it grew fast. Some online commentators even speculated that tension between Sanders and former leadership, particularly under Kevin Stefanski, may have played a role in how the offense was structured. Again, nothing verified, but reports claim there were disagreements about reps, development pace, and offensive control. The idea that internal politics might have influenced on-field decisions only fueled the fire. Then came the Dillon-Gabriel comparison debates. When another quarterback receives extra reps or favorable packages, fans notice. And in Cleveland's case, every rotation decision became part of a larger theory. Was it normal competition, or was someone trying to shape a narrative? Social media doesn't wait for facts. It builds momentum. Clips circulated showing Sanders stepping up into collapsing pockets, delivering accurate throws seconds before taking hits, making something out of nothing. And beneath those videos were thousands of comments suggesting he was battling more than just opposing defenses. Look at the right guard. Why didn't the tackle even touch that rusher? This can't be accidental. The language escalated quickly. Some posts went further, claiming players were checked out or not buying in. Others hinted at locker room divides. A few even used stronger accusations. But again, these remain unverified online theories, not confirmed realities. Still, perception matters in the NFL. And when enough fans start questioning effort, it changes the conversation. Analysts were forced to address it. Talk shows debated it. Cleveland media pushed back, calling it overreaction. But the more they dismissed it, the louder the online community became. Because here's the thing, football fans understand protection schemes. They know what a blown assignment looks like. And when the same breakdowns happen repeatedly, people start asking uncomfortable questions. Was it coaching confusion, poor roster construction, or something more strategic? The Browns never publicly acknowledged any internal conflict. But the fact that a full offensive line reset is even being discussed has only intensified the speculation. If everything was normal, why such a drastic move? And that's why these rumors refuse to die. Because whether true or not, the belief that Sanders had to overcome more than just defenses has reshaped how fans view this team. And once that trust cracks, it's almost impossible to repair. It only took one clip to flip the entire conversation. Not a press conference, not a headline, just raw game tape. The moment that shifted everything started circulating late at night, a third-and-long snap where the pocket collapsed almost instantly. The edge rusher came free. The interior pushed backward. Chaos everywhere. And somehow, in the middle of it, Shedeur Sanders stayed calm. He stepped up, reset his feet, fired a strike 25 yards downfield. Completion. That play alone made people pause. Because for weeks, the narrative had been that he wasn't ready, that he was holding the offense back, that the struggles were on him. But the tape told a different story. It showed a quarterback navigating constant pressure, adjusting protections on the fly, and delivering accurate throws with defenders in his face. Then more clips surfaced. Red zone bootleg. Defender unblocked off the edge. Sanders rolls opposite pressure and drops a pass perfectly between two defenders. Another third down. Free rusher untouched. He spins out, keeps his eyes downfield, finds the tight end over the middle. These weren't desperation throws. They were composed, controlled, high-level plays. And that's when the tone shifted. Instead of asking, why is he struggling? People started asking, how is he surviving this? Analysts began breaking it down more carefully. Slow-motion replays showed protection breakdowns happening before routes even developed. On multiple snaps, rushers weren't delayed, chipped, or even acknowledged. Whether it was miscommunication, poor execution, or schematic confusion, the result was the same: Sanders under siege. But he wasn't panicking. He was processing. That distinction mattered. Footwork remained clean, mechanics tight, eyes scanning downfield instead of dropping to the rush. Even when he took hits, he popped back up without visible frustration. That resilience started to resonate. And then came the comparison reels. Side-by-side clips of clean pockets around the league contrasted with the constant pressure in Cleveland. It didn't prove anything intentional. It didn't confirm sabotage. But it did highlight one undeniable truth. The degree of difficulty was higher than most realized. The tape didn't scream conspiracy. It screamed adversity. And overcoming adversity changes perception fast. Even critics had to admit the throws were high level. The anticipation was there. The arm talent was undeniable. More importantly, the poise under pressure looked like something you can't teach. Once that became clear, the blame narrative weakened. Because quarterbacks who struggle usually show visible cracks, rushed mechanics, forced throws, panic decisions. That wasn't happening consistently here. Instead, the film showed a player adapting in real time. And in the NFL, film doesn't lie. You can debate rumors, you can argue opinions, but the tape is objective. It captures every movement, every missed block, every split-second decision. And what it captured was a quarterback battling through chaos, not creating it. That shift in perspective didn't just defend Sanders. It forced the organization to reevaluate everything around him. Then came the move that nobody could ignore. No long speech, no dramatic announcement, just quiet but undeniable action. When Todd Monken stepped into a stronger leadership role within the Cleveland Browns structure, the tone around the organization changed almost overnight. And the first signal of that shift wasn't subtle. The offensive line was dismantled. Not adjusted, not slightly reshuffled, dismantled. In the NFL, you protect continuity in the trenches at all costs. Offensive lines rely on chemistry built over seasons, silent communication, instinctive recognition of stunts, trust developed rep by rep. Blowing up all 5 starting spots is something teams avoid unless they believe the foundation is broken. So when Cleveland began moving on from multiple starters, the message was clear. The old structure wasn't acceptable anymore. And whether intentional or not, it felt like a declaration of support for Shedeur Sanders. Because here's what power shifts look like in professional football: they aren't loud. They're strategic. You don't argue narratives publicly. You build around your chosen direction privately. Replacing the line wasn't just about performance metrics. It was about identity. For weeks, debates raged about whether Sanders was the problem or the product of dysfunction. Once Monken began reshaping the protection unit, the organization appeared to answer that question without saying a word. If you love real talk and fearless NFL breakdowns, hit subscribe and join Coach Speaks. They chose the quarterback. Of course, no official statement framed it that way. Teams never admit internal friction or philosophical disagreements. But in a league where roster moves speak louder than press conferences, actions become the real communication. And this action was bold. It suggested a new priority: stability around the passer, investment in protection, emphasis on cohesion that supports development instead of complicating it. Monken has long been viewed as an aggressive offensive mind, someone who believes in empowering quarterbacks rather than limiting them. His systems historically lean into tempo, spacing, and trust in decision-making. If that philosophy was going to take root in Cleveland, it required a front line capable of executing it cleanly. That meant change. And with change comes accountability. Veterans who once felt secure suddenly weren't. Competition intensified. The locker room hierarchy shifted. When you remove 5 starters, you aren't just changing personnel, you're resetting culture. The ripple effects were immediate. Fans interpreted it as validation. Critics saw it as risk. Analysts called it historic. But inside the building, it was likely simpler: align the infrastructure with the quarterback you believe in. Because rebuilding a line isn't cheap. It demands draft capital, cap space, and patience. Teams don't commit to that unless they're confident about the signal caller behind it. So whether framed as a performance decision or a philosophical pivot, Monken's reset represented something larger. It marked the moment Cleveland stopped debating its direction and started defining it. And once an organization makes that choice, there's no halfway point. You either protect the future or you accept the consequences. Once the offensive line reset began, the spotlight immediately shifted to the next pressure point: the draft. Because if the Cleveland Browns are serious about protecting their investment in Shedeur Sanders, the 2026 draft isn't just important. It's defining. 10 total picks, 2 first-rounders, a second-round selection sitting at number 39. On paper, that's flexibility, that's power. That's the kind of draft capital teams dream about when they're trying to reshape a roster fast. But here's the twist: having picks is one thing, using them correctly is everything. Early mock drafts are already floating around. Some analysts predict defensive reinforcements, a linebacker, maybe secondary depth. Others argue Cleveland needs edge rotation or interior disruption. And from a traditional team-building standpoint, those aren't crazy ideas. But this situation isn't traditional. When you commit to a quarterback, especially one surrounded by as much attention as Sanders, the draft becomes strategic protection, not just talent collection. Every pick has to answer one question: does this make his job easier? That doesn't always mean offensive linemen in round one. It could mean a receiver who separates faster, a tight end who blocks and stretches the seam, a running back who forces defenses to respect play action, or yes, another lineman who solidifies the pocket once and for all. The margin for error shrinks when the spotlight grows. If Cleveland uses premium capital on positions that don't directly or indirectly stabilize the offense, critics will question the direction immediately. Because once you reset the line and shift coaching influence, you've essentially declared the quarterback your centerpiece. And centerpieces require reinforcement. What makes this draft even more fascinating is timing. 2 first-round picks allow for aggression, trade up, trade down, package selections. The Browns aren't boxed in, they can maneuver. But maneuver toward what? That's the tension, building quietly in league circles. Some insiders suggest Cleveland could double down on offense early, stacking protection and weapons to eliminate excuses entirely. Others believe they'll balance both sides of the ball, trusting the offensive reset already in motion. The front office won't tip its hand publicly. It never does, but fans are watching patterns closely now. Because the draft will reveal belief. If the early picks prioritize protecting the pocket and enhancing timing routes, that signals full commitment. If not, questions will resurface about alignment between coaching philosophy and roster construction. 10 picks sounds like abundance. In reality, it's pressure. Each selection will be dissected as either reinforcement of the new direction or hesitation disguised as balance. And when a quarterback's development is the central storyline, hesitation can be costly. This isn't just about filling holes. It's about closing debates. The 2026 draft is Cleveland's opportunity to move from reaction to intention, to show that the reset wasn't cosmetic, but foundational. Because when you hold that much capital, you aren't just drafting players. You're drafting the future of the franchise. If the offensive line was the first domino, the wide receiver room might be the next pressure point waiting to fall. Because protection means nothing if separation doesn't follow. Heading into 2026, the Cleveland Browns receiver group looks stable on paper, but stability and chemistry aren't the same thing. And when you're building around a quarterback like Shedeur Sanders, chemistry becomes everything. Let's start with the obvious name, Jerry Jeudy. Jeudy's talent has never been questioned. Route running, burst off the line, separation ability, it's all there. But consistency has always followed him like a shadow. Drops at the wrong time. Timing that looks slightly off. Body language that fans dissect frame by frame. None of that proves anything intentional, but perception in the NFL can be just as powerful as reality. And perception around this receiver room is shifting. Online debates have intensified about fit, not skill, fit. Some fans believe Jeudy thrives in a different system. Others think his rhythm hasn't fully synced with Sanders' tempo. There's no confirmed locker room conflict, no verified internal dispute. But rumors suggest the offensive overhaul may not stop with the line. Because as the offense pivots, so does the pecking order. Then there's Isaiah Bond, the name gaining quiet momentum. Bond represents speed, vertical stress, and explosive upside. Every time he flashes separation downfield, social media lights up. Supporters argue he matches Sanders' aggressive downfield instincts perfectly. It's not just about talent anymore. It's about alignment. When a quarterback plays with anticipation, he needs receivers who hit landmarks precisely. When he extends plays, he needs targets who adjust mid-route instinctively. That's the next evolution of this offense, not just better protection, but synchronized movement. The tension isn't necessarily personal. It's strategic. Cleveland's receiver depth chart is solid, but not overwhelming. Cedric Tillman brings size. Tight ends add red zone presence. But there's still a lingering sense that one more elite separator could transform everything. And here, where the drama builds. If the Browns use early draft capital on another receiver, what message does that send? Competition fuels growth, but it also reshapes roles. Veterans suddenly feel pressure. Snap counts tighten, targets redistribute. In a locker room, already navigating a power shift around the quarterback, that matters. Because when a franchise resets its offensive line and accumulates draft capital, it isn't just rebuilding infrastructure, it's redefining hierarchy. The receiver room will either solidify around Sanders' style or quietly fragment under expectations. No confirmed fractures exist right now, but in today's NFL, narratives form quickly. A missed route becomes a trend. A dropped pass becomes a talking point. And when the quarterback is under the microscope, every incomplete pass is magnified. This isn't chaos. It's a crossroads. The Browns must decide whether to double down on current chemistry or aggressively upgrade the room to eliminate doubt entirely. Because if this truly is the beginning of a new era, the weapons have to reflect it. And wide receiver rooms don't stay quiet for long. The divide didn't happen overnight. It built slowly, week after week, clip after clip, headline after headline. And before anyone officially acknowledged it, there were two completely different conversations happening around the Cleveland Browns. One from the media. One from the fans. If you love real talk and fearless NFL breakdowns, hit subscribe and join Coach Speaks. On television and in traditional press conferences, the tone stayed measured. Analysts questioned consistency. They discussed mechanics. They debated decision-making. When protection broke down, it was framed as collective struggle. When drives stalled, the blame felt evenly distributed. The message was calm, controlled, and careful. But online, it was a different world. Fans breaking down film on social platforms weren't interested in safe language. They clipped pressures, highlighted missed blocks, froze frames of receivers cutting routes short. They built threads comparing clean pockets across the league to what Shedeur Sanders was navigating in Cleveland. The result was friction. Because when fans feel like they're seeing something that isn't being acknowledged publicly, trust erodes fast. Comment sections turned into debates about accountability. Why weren't certain breakdowns being called out directly? Why did some broadcasts focus heavily on quarterback errors but gloss over protection failures? Again, no confirmed agenda, no proven bias, but perception became the storyline. Local media defended their analysis, pointing to overall team struggles and emphasizing long-term development. National commentators often zoomed out, framing it as typical growing pains for a young offense. Meanwhile, fans insisted the context wasn't being fully represented. Two narratives, same games, completely different conclusions. And that tension only intensified once roster changes began. When offensive linemen were replaced and coaching influence shifted, fans interpreted it as validation. See, it wasn't him. But some media voices called it routine off-season adjustment. That disconnect widened the gap. Because in modern football culture, fans don't just consume coverage, they create it. All 22 breakdowns, statistical deep dives, side-by-side comparisons. The information pipeline isn't controlled anymore. And when independent analysis contradicts traditional reporting, it sparks suspicion. The Browns found themselves caught in that storm. Was the team protecting its image? Were critics overreacting? Or was the truth somewhere in the middle? What made it more complicated was Sanders' composure through all of it. He didn't publicly criticize teammates. He didn't fire back at analysts. He stayed measured. That silence allowed narratives to grow unchecked on both sides. The media focused on professionalism and development. Fans focused on adversity and resilience. And the louder each side became, the harder it was to find common ground. This isn't just about football. It's about who controls the story of a franchise in transition. Because once a fan base believes its quarterback is being misrepresented, loyalty hardens. Every critique feels personal. Every praise feels earned. And the organization has to navigate that emotional landscape carefully. Right now, Cleveland isn't just rebuilding a roster. It's managing a narrative battle, one that might define how this era is remembered.
If you enjoyed today's breakdown and want to keep up with all the drama, trades, and behind-the-scenes action in the NFL, then don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps this channel grow and lets us know you love this kind of content. And hey, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with your friends, your group chats, or anyone who loves football as much as you do. The more the conversation spreads, the better it gets. Most importantly, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel and tap the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss when we drop fresh stories, wild rumors, or breaking updates that the mainstream media won't talk about.